Good evening, and we will resume dictation. Give us a moment. Core beliefs are those with which you build your life. You are consciously aware of these, though often you do not focus your attention upon them. They become invisible. Therefore, unless you become aware of the contents of your conscious mind. To become acquainted with your own ideas and beliefs, you must walk among them, symbolically speaking, without blinders. You must look through the structures that you have yourself created, the organized ideas upon which you have grouped your experience. To see clearly into your own mind, you must first of all unstructure your thoughts. Follow them without judging them, without comparing them to the framework of your beliefs. Structured beliefs collect and hold your experience, packaging it, so to speak. And so when you look at a given experience that seems like another, you put it into the same structured package, often without examination. Such beliefs can hold surprises. When you lift up the cover of one, you may find that it has served to hide valuable information that did not belong there. An artificial grouping of ideas like paper, flowers can be collected about a standard core belief. The core belief, because of its intensity and because of your habits, will often tend to attract to itself others of a like nature. They will hang on. If you are not accustomed to examining your own mind, then you can allow separate growths of this kind to form about a belief until you cannot distinguish one from the other. This can develop to such an extent that all of your experience is seen only in relationship to this one ideal growth. Data that seems unrelated to this core belief is then not assimilated, but thrown into the corners of your mind, unused, and you are denied the value of the information. Separate portions of your mind can obtain such chambers of inactive material. This information will not be a part of the organized structure of your usual thoughts. Though the data is consciously available, you can be relatively blind to it. Usually, when you look into your conscious mind, you do so for a particular reason, to find some information. But if you have schooled yourself to believe that such data is not consciously available, then it will not occur to you to find it in your conscious mind. If, furthermore, your conscious data is strongly organized about a core belief, this will automatically make you blind to experience that is not connected with it. A core belief is invisible only when you think of it as a fact of life and not as a belief about life. Only when you identify with it so completely that you automatically focus your perceptions along that specific line. For example, here's a seemingly very innocent core belief. I am a responsible parent. Now, on the surface, there is nothing wrong with that belief. If you hold to it and do not examine it, however, you may find that the word responsible is quite loaded and collects other ideas that are equally unexamined by you. What is your idea of being responsible? According to your answer, you can discover whether the core belief works to your advantage or not. If responsible means I must be a parent 24 hours a day, to the exclusion of everything else, then you may be in difficulty, for that core belief might prevent you from using other abilities that exist quite apart from your parenthood. You may begin to perceive all physical data through the eyes of that core belief alone. You will not look out upon physical reality with the wonder of a child anymore, or with the unstructured curiosity of an individual, but always through parental eyes. Thus you will close yourself off from much of physical experience. Now, telepathically, you will also attract unconscious data that fits into this rigid pattern. according to the strength and stubbornness of this ideal and whether or not you are willing to deal with it. You may narrow your life still further, all information of any kind finally becoming relatively invisible to you unless it touches upon your parental reality. Now, the core belief just given is of one kind. You hold some basic assumptions that are also core beliefs. To you, they seem to be definitions. They are so a part of you that you take them for granted. Your idea of time is one. You may enjoy manipulating thoughts of time in your mind. You may find yourself thinking that time is basically different from your experience of it. But fundamentally, you believe that you exist in the hours and the years and the weeks come at you one at a time, that you are caught in the onrush of the seasons. Naturally, your physical experience reinforces this belief. You structure your perception, therefore, in terms of the lapses that seem to happen between events. This in itself forces you to concentrate your attention in one direction only and discourages you from perceiving the events in your life in other fashions. You may occasionally employ the association of ideas, one thought leading easily to another. When you do this, you often perceive new insights. As the events fall apart from time continuity in your mind, they seem to take on fresh vitality. You have unstructured them, you see, from the usual organization. As you apprehend them through association, you come quite close to examining the contents of your mind in a free fashion. But if you drop the time concept and then view the conscious content of your mind through other core ideas, you are still structuring. I am not saying that you should never organize those contents. I am saying that you must become aware of your own structures. Build them up or tear them down, but do not allow yourself to become blind to the furniture of your own mind. You can stub your toe as easily on a misplaced ideal as you can upon an old chair. It will help you, in fact, if you think of your own beliefs as furniture that can be rearranged, changed, renewed, completely discarded, or replaced. Your ideas are yours. They should not control you. It is up to you to accept those that you choose to accept. Imagine yourself, then, rearranging this furniture. Images of particular pieces will come clearly to you. Ask yourself what ideas these pieces represent. See how well the tables fit together. Open up the drawers inside. There will be no mystery. You know what your own beliefs are. You will see the groupings. But it is up to you to look inside your own mind and to use the images in your own way. Throw out ideas that do not suit you. If you read this, find such an ideal in yourself, and then say, I cannot throw this ideal away. Then you must realize that your inner remark is in itself a belief. You can indeed throw the ideal away, the second one, as easily as the first. You are not powerless before ideas. Using this analogy, you will certainly find some furniture that you did not expect. Do not simply look in the center of your inner room of consciousness and make sure that you are on guard against the certain invisibility that was mentioned earlier, where an ideal quite available appears to be a part of reality itself. The structuring of beliefs is done in a highly characteristic yet individual manner. So you will find patterns that exist between various groupings, and one can lead you to another. The idea of being the responsible parent, for example, may lead quite easily to other psychic structures involving responsibility, so that data is accepted on its own value. You may even think that it is wrong to view any situation except through your parental status. The belief in guilt, therefore, would be a cementing structure that would hold together other similar core beliefs and add to their strength. You must understand that these are not simply dead ideas like debris within your mind. They are psychic matter. In a sense, then, they are alive. They group themselves like cells, protecting their own validity and identity. You feed them, figuratively speaking, with like ideas. When you examine one such belief, then you obviously threaten the integrity of the structure, and so there are ways of inserting new supports, so to speak, methods to tide you over. The whole core belief need not fall down upon you as you examine its basis. Now, I will stop at that for now and take a break. We will be finished with this chapter shortly, and then we will begin the next. And anyway, I'll skip this part and go on down to the next. Although it's very long, maybe it's important. I think I'll read it. It's too long not to be important. They had, I didn't read this part, but they had Richard Bosch, who wrote Illusions. That's a book I read also. And he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And he was visiting them that day. Jane's trance had been good. We were pleased that others had been present during some book dictation. The rest of the session was given over to our guests. Seth's manner became more jovial, and his pace speeded up considerably. Some notes added later. Dick Bosch felt that he didn't really write Seagull himself. By now, the story of that book conception is well known. Late one night in 1959, Dick was walking beside a canal near a West Coast bench when he heard a voice say, "Jonathan Livingston Seagull." No one else was around. He was astonished. He was ever more so when, on his return home, the voice initiated images that gave him the bulk of the book in three-dimensional form. Then it stopped. On his own, Dick tried unsuccessfully to finish the manuscript. Nothing happened until one day, 8 years later, when he suddenly wakened to hear the voice again, and with it came the rest of the book. Who wrote it? Dick didn't claim authorship. He came across the Seth material, saw similarities in Jane's and his experience, and came here to see if she or Seth could explain the phenomena. There are points of correlation, of course, only Jane is presented not with just a voice, but with an entire personality, Seth, who then writes books while she is in an altered state of consciousness. So she and Dick were highly interested in what Seth would say. Besides this, Jane's novel, The Education of Oversoul 7, was written under similar and yet different circumstances. She describes the processes involved in her introduction, along with the creation of some of her poetry. To Jane, these states are all aspects of the same kind of highly accelerated creativity that finally goes beyond itself into levels or aspects of reality that we don't understand clearly yet. The whole question is also relevant in cases involving automatic writing, painting, singing, musical composition, etc. Now here are some near verbatim quotes from the information Seth gave Dick Bosch and Company on the evening of September the 27th, 1972. Information does not exist by itself. Connected with it is the consciousness of all those who understand it, perceive it, or originate it. So there are not records in terms of objective, forever available banks of information into which you tune. Instead, the consciousness that held, or holds, or will hold the information, attracts it like a magnet. The information itself wants to move toward consciousness. It is not dead or inert. It is not something you grab for. It is also something that wants to be grabbed, and so it gravitates to those who seek it. Your consciousness attracts the consciousness that is already connected with the material. That is one of my goodies for the evening. Information, then, becomes new and is reborn as it is interpreted through a new consciousness, as Seagull was. The inner portion of your being, using those abilities that have always been yours, interpreted the information through the kaleidoscope of your own being, using the best portions of yourself, producing then a brilliant truth in new clothes, but in clothes that no one could have given it but yourself. Now, I will tell you, if you assign the authorship of Seagull to another, then you deny the uniqueness of your own inner self. The truth came to you and was given to you, but the originality and uniqueness was provided by your own inner being, which may now be so separate from your conscious self that it seems to be apart from it. So other things were also involved, not only the birth of a book, but the emergence of the inner self through art into the physical universe. Now part of the focus and the strength comes from those two births, and the intensity behind them is also the reason why the book natively strikes the world as strongly as it does. The two are merged in the book. You are looking for the author of Seagull, and I tell you, I am looking at him. He may not have the face that you see when you look in the mirror, simply because you cannot see your true identity in a mirror. But I am looking at all that is visible of the author of Seagull, and you should know him best of all. And I will tell you through the years how to become acquainted with him, and more on speaking terms. Rupert already had a head start on this, so I'm not spoiling this fun. There are indeed aspects of your own consciousness that operate in completely different environments. Environments, for example, that are not physical. They are aspects of you, therefore, that know many other kinds of information than those available to you at the conscious level now. Note that Seth endorsed Jane's theory of aspects. She's begun a book on the subject. In it she will explain, among other things, the nature, validity, and source of such personalities as Seth, and the intrusion of institutional or revelatory material. Once again, see her introduction. Session 619. My mother lives with my brother and his family in a small community in upstate New York near Rochester, and Jane and I had spent the weekend visiting one and all. During our drive back to Elmira this morning, Jane said, "Somebody's working on Seth's book. I can tell you that. I keep getting snatches of it. It's about imagination and beliefs, I think, and how they interact. Only there's a lot more to it." "Well," she added, pleased, "it's nice to know the work's being done." And now for the session. Now I bid you good evening. Good evening, Seth. And unless there is something you specifically want me to discuss, we will resume dictation. No, go ahead. Give us a moment then. Imagination also plays an important part in your subjective life as it gives mobility to your beliefs. It is one of the motivating agencies that helps transform your beliefs into physical experience. It is vital, therefore, that you understand the interrelationship between ideas and imagination. In order to dislodge unsuitable beliefs and establish new ones, you must learn to use your imagination to move concepts in and out of your mind. The proper use of imagination can then propel ideas in the directions you desire. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Your imagination and your beliefs, and a few words about the origin of your beliefs. In physical life, your conscious mind is largely dependent upon the workings of your physical brain. You have a conscious mind whether you are in flesh or out of it. But when you are physically oriented, then it is connected to the physical brain. The brain, to some extent, keeps the mind to a three-dimensional focus. It orients you toward the environment in which you must operate. And it is because of the mind's allegiance with the temporal brain that you perceive, for example, time as a series of moments. The brain channels the information that the mind receives to your physical structure, so that your experience is physically shifted and automatically translated into terms that the organism can understand. Because of this, physically speaking, and in life as you think of it, the mind is to a large extent dependent upon the brain's growth and activity. There is some information necessary to physical survival that must be taught and handed down from parent to child. There are basic assumptions of a general nature with which you are born, but because the specific conditions of your environment are so various, these must be implemented. So it is necessary that the child accept beliefs from its parents. Those will reinforce the family group when the child most needs protection. The acquiescence to belief, then, is important in the early stages of as infant develops into child. This sharing of mutual ideals not only protects the new offspring from dangers obvious to the parent, it also serves as a framework within which the child can grow. This provides leeway until the conscious mind is able to reason for itself and provide its own value judgments. Later I will discuss greater aspects of the origin of ideas, but for now we will simply speak in terms of this life, the one you know. The beliefs that you receive, therefore, are your parents' conceptions of the nature of reality. They are given to you through an example, verbal communication, and constant telepathic reinforcement. You receive ideas about the world in general and your relationship to it, and from your parents you are also given concepts of what you are. You pick up their ideas of your own reality. Underneath all of this, you carry indelibly within your own knowledge of your identity, meaning, and purpose. But in the early stages of development, great care is taken to see that you relate in physical terms. These are directional beliefs that you receive from your parents, orienting you in ways that they feel are safe. Cushioned with these beliefs, the child can be safe and satisfy its own curiosity, develop its abilities, and throw its full energy in clearly stated areas of activity. So it is quite necessary that an acquiescence of belief does exist, particularly in early life. There's no reason, though, for an individual to be bound by childhood beliefs or experience. The nature of some such beliefs is that while seemingly obvious ones are recognized as harmful or foolish, others connected to them may not be so easily understood. For example, it may seem silly to you that you ever believed in, say, original sin. It may not be so obvious that many of your present actions are caused by a belief in guilt. We will have much to say about the ways in which your beliefs can be connected, simply because you are not used to examining them. You may say, I am overweight because I feel guilty about something in my past. You may then try to discover what the charged event was, but in such a case your trouble is a belief in guilt itself. You do not have to carry such a belief. I am well aware that strong elements of your civilization are built upon ideals of guilt and punishment. Many of you are afraid that without a feeling of guilt there would be no inner discipline, and the world would run wild. It is running quite wild now. Not despite your ideas of guilt and punishment, but largely because of them. But we will have more to say about that later in the book. The early ideas given to you by your parents, then, structure your learning experiences themselves. They set the safe boundaries within which you can operate in early years, quite without your conscious knowing, because your mind, connected with its brain, is not that developed. Your imagination is set along certain roads. Largely, but not completely, your imagination follows your beliefs, as do your emotions. To some extent, there are certain general patterns. A child will cry when it is hurt. It will stop when the hurt stops, and the emotion behind the cry will automatically change into another. But if the child discovers that a prolonged cry after the event gets extra attention and consideration, then it will begin to extend the emotion. From the earliest stages, the child automatically compares its interpretation of reality with its parents'. Since the parents are bigger and stronger and fulfill so many of its needs, it will attempt to bring its experience into line with their experiences and beliefs. While it is generally quite natural for the child to cry or feel badly when hurt, this inclination can be carried through belief to such an extent that prolonged feelings of desolation are adopted as definite behavior patterns. Behind this would be the belief that any hurt was inherently a disaster. Such a belief could originate from an over-anxious mother, for instance. If such a mother's imagination followed her belief, as of course it would, then she would immediately perceive a great potential danger to her child in the smallest threat. Both through the mother's actions and telepathically, the child would receive such a message and react according to those understood beliefs. Many such beliefs lie quite within the conscious mind. The grown adult not used to examining his or her own beliefs, however, may be quite unaware of harboring such an ideal. The ideal itself is not buried or unconscious. It is simply unexamined. So one of the most hampering beliefs of all, as earlier mentioned, is the ideal that the clues to current behavior are buried and usually inaccessible. This belief itself closes you to the contents of your own conscious mind and prevents you from looking there for the answers that are available. Now you may take your break. Jane said she had been really out during her trance and that now she felt almost drunk with exhilaration. The times noted as she delivered the material show that she'd marched along at a good pace. On the one hand, she continued, looking a little bleary. I could go way under and deliver the book until morning, or I could just go to bed and conk out right now. She was quite curious about the reasons behind these feelings. I now described an effect that had started to bother me after the session had begun. It's a good little bit of the way beliefs can work. No sooner had Seth come through than I became aware of an unaccustomed tightness in my writing hand, a tension that interfered with the automatic formation of the letters and words. I kept the notes going by making an extra effort, but I found it quite distracting to keep thinking about the mechanics of writing while trying to concentrate upon what Seth was saying. The difficulty persisted through the delivery and into break. I told Jane I'd thought of using the pendulum after the session to get at the cause of the hand phenomena, since I didn't want to interrupt book dictation by asking Seth about it. Briefly, for those who have asked me, the pendulum is a very old method. I use it with excellent results to obtain ideomotor, subconscious responses about knowledge that lies just outside my usual consciousness. I hold a small, heavy object suspended by a thread so that it's free to move. By mentally asking questions, I obtain yes or no answers according to whether the pendulum swings back and forth or from side to side. As we talked about our individual hang-ups, Jane said that we had a choice. We could get material on them or continue with the book work. Both channels were available from Seth, complete. Although we wanted dictation to continue, we were also interested in learning more about our personal questions. Feeling somewhat guilty, we opted for the latter course. But as the material unfolded, we were glad we had done so. Resume at 10:20. Now, this is for your information. First of all, it is within your conscious mind. The pendulum would be a method for allowing you to view conscious material that is not structured to recognized beliefs. I want you to understand that, for the reader does not have the benefit of my talking to him personally in this way. The belief is conscious. You are well aware of it, but you are not aware of those that cling to it. The belief is that you do not communicate well with your mother. Seth was quite correct. Talk about seeing the proverbial light. Suddenly I saw the belief that had been right there all the time. Remember that Jane and I had spent the weekend visiting my mother and brother. Hinged to this is the belief that this felt lack of communication is wrong, and that for anything wrong you should be punished. In taking dictation for this book, you are helping us communicate with many people, while at the same time you feel that you cannot communicate with your own parent. These beliefs working together then bring about a strain in the hand that does the writing. Quite simply, you want to express through the sessions these ideas in which you so believe, and yet you feel or believe yourself guilty for doing so when you cannot describe the same ideas to your own parent. The conflicting beliefs then cause the difficulty in the method. The hand's motion is not as automatically smooth as it should be. You also believe that you communicate through writing far better than you do verbally. To Rupert, you often write notes saying things easily and beautifully that you find difficult verbally because of your belief. Yes. So this evening you feel guilty in reaching others through transcribing the notes when you believe that you could not reach your mother vocally. So the method becomes involved with your beliefs. I am giving this to you to show you how beliefs work. So also believe, if you wish, you can underline every belief while I am talking to you, that your main method of communication is painting, and here you are taking notes as a form of dissemination instead. This would not be involved particularly were it not for the fact of two subsidiary current beliefs that conflict, having to do with the weekend. One, that you should be in Rochester as you were, dealing vocally with your mother, and two, that you should have been there, reaching out to the world at large through your painting. Instead, on your return, you are communicating to the world through your notes, a choice you make consciously, but without being aware of the other contents of your conscious mind and the conflicting beliefs. Do you follow me? Yes. These mentioned beliefs are obvious enough when I tell you of them, but their opposing natures gave confusing data to the body consciousness. Right and do not right. The idea of punishment, the belief in it, also enters in. You do what you decided to do anyway, have the session, but by punishing yourself with your own personal interpretation. Your mother's condition, you believe, involves a lack of communication. Your brother told you about her occasionally faltering speech. Now your quite conscious interpretation of an apt kind of self-punishment was a lack of hand motion. I'm trying to put this simply so you can follow the connections. Because you believe your method of expression is primarily through your hand in painting, and you believe your mother's to be vocal, you tempered with your hand's motion, not, for example, your speech. Can you follow that consciously? Yes, and it was very well put. I thought as I wrote. Now, at various times, you made those conscious choices. They escaped your notice, but they existed as conscious points of awareness and choice. Now, do you have any questions? No, I'd just like time to think about all of this. Now, Rupert has recently been in the process of recognizing some beliefs that he wants to get rid of. He has been loosening them so they rattle around within his consciousness. He is becoming aware of them. They are not as invisible as they were. He is facing many of them for the first time. I lost my place. Oh, you should both become equally aware and consciously and alertly aware of the beneficial ideas and their importance in your lives, and this will be a portion of the book for others also. Tonight, Rupert was exhausted, in one way, from comparing your joint beliefs with those of your brother's family, of checking his own body beliefs with theirs, and seeing where his were detrimental, but also from contrasting his personal psyche and creative abilities with theirs, and that exhilarated him. The result was that he felt both exhausted and exhilarated. I saw to it that he became aware that I was working on our book this morning. Ideas about it came into his consciousness. In the past, he did not believe that such bleed-throughs should occur, and so in his experience they did not usually emerge. They were there, but his belief prevented his recognition of them. I will from time to time give subsidiary material for Rupert and also for you, implementing a chapter in the book for your personal use. It is vital that you realize you are working with beliefs in your mind, that the real work is done there in the mind, and not look for immediate physical results. They will follow as surely and certainly as the bad results followed. And this must be a belief that the good results will come. But the real work is done in the mind. If you do the work, then you can rest assured of the results, but you must not check constantly for them. Do you see the difference? Yes. Do you have any questions? No, I think it's excellent material. As Seth, Jane now did something rather unusual. She turned in her rocker to look at the clock that sits to her left and somewhat behind her as our combination bookcase and room divider. Now, take a break. I will then add some book material to get us further into the chapter, but I will not keep you over long. After Jane had come out of another far-out trance, as she put it, I was very pleased to tell her that my writing hand was much improved and that Seth had answered her own questions. I went over the delivery with her. Resumed at 11:08. Dictation. Your beliefs always change to some extent. As an adult, you perform many activities that you believed you could not as a child. For instance, you may, at the age of 3, have believed it was dangerous to cross a street. By 30, hopefully, you have dismissed such a belief, though it fit in very well and was necessary to you in your childhood. If your mother reinforced this belief telepathically and verbally through dire pictures of the potential danger involved in street crossing, however, then you would also carry within you that emotional fear, and perhaps entertain imaginative considerations of possible accident. Your emotions and your imagination both follow your belief. When the belief vanishes, then the same emotional context is no longer entertained, and your imagination turns in other directions. Beliefs automatically mobilize your emotional and imaginative powers. Few beliefs are intellectual alone. When you are examining the contents of your conscious mind, you must learn or recognize the emotional and imaginative connotations that are connected with a given ideal. There are various ways of altering the belief by substituting its opposite. One particular method is three-pronged. You generate the emotion opposite the one that arises from the belief you want to change, and you turn your imagination in the opposite direction from the one dictated by the belief. At the same time, you consciously assure yourself that the unsatisfactory belief is an ideal about reality and not an aspect of reality itself. You realize that ideals are not stationary. Emotions and imagination move them in one direction or the other, reinforce them or negate them. Quite deliberately, you use your conscious mind playfully, creating a game as children do, in which for a time you completely ignore what seems to be in physical terms and pretend that what you really want is real. If you are poor, you purposely pretend that you have all you need financially. Imagine how you will spend your money. If you are ill, imagine playfully that you are cured. See yourself doing what you would do. If you cannot communicate with others, imagine yourself doing so easily. If you feel your days dark and pointless, then imagine them filled and joyful. Now, this may sound impractical, yet in your daily life you use your imagination and your emotions often at the service of far less worthy beliefs, and the results are quite clear, and let me add, unfortunately, practical. As it took a while for the unsatisfactory beliefs to become materialized, so it may be a time before you see physical results. But the new ideas will take growth and change your experience as certainly as the old ones did. The process of imagining will also bring you face to face with other subsidiary ideas that may momentarily bring you up short. You may see where you held two quite conflicting ideas simultaneously and with equal vigor. In such a case, you stalemated yourself. You may believe that you have a right to health and yet with equal intensity believe that the human condition is by nature tainted. So you will try to be healthy and not healthy at the same time, or successful and not successful according to your individual system of beliefs. For later in the book, you will see how your beliefs will generally fall into a system of related ideas. This is the end for the evening. Very good, Seth. I am glad you approve. Good night. I bid you a fond good evening and a hearty introduction to good beliefs. Okay, I will end there. I'm at 40 minutes. And I do know that beliefs can give you instant gratification, even if you don't like it, because one time I was talking to my husband who had a problem with his memory. And I was recalling a time when I was with my daughter and we were both very sick and we didn't have a car. And we had to walk to the doctor and we were holding on to trees, and I really dramatized it so very good for the benefit of entertaining him in telling him of this disastrous, horrible incident of being sick and kind of lost for any help. So, as I was telling him this, I finished it with gusto, and suddenly I had the very same sickness that I felt in the event I was telling him about. I had the flu-like symptoms and a sore throat, and out of the blue all that just came on me. I think I convinced a part of myself that I must have enjoyed that because it gave it to me again. So I don't know about germs. I don't know if germs are really the cause of sickness sometimes. I think sometimes it's our thoughts, just like he's saying here. We can think ourselves sick and we can think ourselves well. And, you know, there are a lot of people, and I've known some, who are what they call hypochondriacs. They're always sick. They're always talking about their sickness to anyone that will listen. And the truth is, they do feel really bad because they believe their own stories and they reoccur the sickness over and over, not knowing that the very talking about it and using it as a method of entertaining someone because they have nothing else to talk about except how very sick they were, and that seems to them to be entertaining, so that's what they talk about and that's what they get. Just like I did that day that I was telling my husband about being sick one time. Anyway, I said, we've got to go to the store right away. I need some throat medicine because my throat is hurting so bad. But that was out of the clear blue. I hadn't had any indication that I was coming down with a cold. But there it got manifested really fast. Anyway, I got over it pretty fast too. Not as long as the first one. Because I knew I had brought that on myself. I really knew that. It was like, gosh. It was an eye-opener to me. I was happy almost that it happened because I realized at that time just how much we have to do with how we feel. And what thoughts we're letting go on inside of us. And it just gave me another little bunch of wisdom not to do that anymore. So now when I tell anybody about something that may have been kind of not too fun, I don't intensify any details of it because I know too well now. I don't want to refill all those feelings and bring it right back on me. Anyway, this is the Dove Lady. I'll talk to you in the next session. Over and out for now.